Hi, good evening. Welcome again for another installation of Danbury Dems. I'm your host for this show. My name is Andrea Gartner. I am the chairman of the Danbury Democratic Town Committee and also a sitting member of the Zoning Commission, City of Danbury. Welcome to tonight's program. I'm particularly excited about tonight's program because tonight is really a demonstration of a younger generation in our community, in the Danbury community, getting involved in local politics and looking to make a difference in our community. First, I want to introduce Angelie, also known as Angie Aleskis. She is a mother of 3 young children on the move all the time, and she'll be running for a seat for City Council at large. Welcome tonight, Angie. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, Andrea, for having me.
Next, we also have Nelson Merchan Jr. Nelson will be running as a zoning board alternate. He's not unfamiliar to this program because sometimes he's also behind the scenes helping to produce the show. So Nelson, thank you so much for joining us
Yes, thank you
tonight.
for the invitation. Happy to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome. First of all, I'd like to just sort of get a sense of, from any guest that's on this show, just what's your background and your history in Danbury. I'm a native of the greater Danbury area for all of my adult life. I grew up in the Danbury area and was really hell-bent on getting out of town when I graduated high school. Found myself after college coming back to the area because it really is a lovely area, and raising my family and getting involved in my community. So Angie, can we start with you? I know you're like me. Well, actually, we all are around this table first generations Americans, so our families came to this country in hopes of a better life for their families and their children. And where did your story start?
Sure. Well, like you said, my parents migrated here from Ecuador like maybe 35 years ago, and they came here undocumented, and then they were able to get status here. And I think that opened up a lot of doors for them. And I was born in Tarrytown, New York, and they moved here to Danbury when I was about 9 years old. So they bought their first home here in Danbury. I was a little bit sad leaving New York when I was a child, but I was excited about living in a new city and being close to family, because we have a lot of family that lives here in Danbury. So I went to South Street Elementary, then I went to Rogers Park Middle School, and then my dad enrolled me into Immaculate High School.
Oh, you're at Immaculate. I didn't know that
Yes.
about you. That's great.
So I did that. I got an awesome education. My dad really worked hard to give me that education. Then after that, I went for my undergrad at the University of New Haven, and I studied criminal justice. And then, just like you had mentioned, like I was set on, like, I'm gonna leave Danbury. I don't wanna be in Danbury anymore. So I actually lived in Long Island for a year. And I worked there in the social service field. So I was doing a foster care caseworker. And as much as I wanted to be independent, I just missed all of the family that I had here in Danbury, obviously my parents, and just all the friends that I had made.
And also, there's a very extended Ecuadorian community in Danbury.
Yes.
It's one of the larger immigrant communities in Danbury, right? There's a cultural club that's on West Street, and so there's a
Right.
lot of ties in that regard as well.
Yes, and different events that they put on, and it's nice to be able to go eat in an Ecuadorian restaurant or Asian restaurant. They have different types of foods here, and I love the diversity and the culture that they have here. So I ended up moving back to Danbury, and now I have my home here, and I've
and children and a husband.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've just established myself here, and I honestly I love it because it's a city, but it's like small but big at the same time, and just the diversity and the culture that it has. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I always see Danbury as a microcosm for really what our nation looks like. And I think the other aspect that's really great is that Danbury is a caring community. So people do take care of their own in Danbury.
Yes. So here I am.
So here you are, right? And now you're stepping up and running for public office. That's wonderful.
Yes.
And Nelson, your ties and your background in Danbury?
Yeah, I was born in Danbury.
Like at Danbury Hospital?
Yeah, Danbury Hospital.
Okay.
My parents actually were living in Connecticut. They're from Columbia. They were newlyweds. My aunts had been living here for a few years, so this was kind of the place to be. I was born here, and then all of my family was living in Columbia. So my parents wanted me to grow up with being surrounded by my family, so we went back to Columbia. I grew up there for a number of years, around 7 years. That's where my sister was born. And then the situation in Columbia started getting worse. The economy was not doing well. There was just a lot of robbery, theft, just kind of the problems of living in a developing country. So we moved back to Connecticut. That was around 18, 19 years ago. And we've been living here since. And this is home. It's where I always thought about. So I went to UConn. I went to Worcester School in Danbury, Connecticut, and then I went to the University of Connecticut, graduated, and then just came back here because, like Angie said, this is where family is.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to live in a city, but there's just so many benefits of living in the suburbs that it makes more sense to live in a suburb and then commute or take the train to the city as opposed to actually living in the city. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. It's enjoying the suburb life and getting involved to take Danbury to the next level, which is I think where we're headed.
Well, I think too, I don't know if either of you know this, but for 8 years I was executive director at City Center Danbury, really focusing on downtown revitalization. And my goal was really kind of clear. It's I would love to see downtown Danbury as a place that I would like to go and visit, like something that would be a value add to me in living in the community. Earlier, before we started the program, I know particularly you, Nelson, were expressing some frustration about what our downtown looks like. I know I've been frustrated in my capacity as trying to move things down there, but from a young adult perspective, someone as a young parent looking ahead to see what your children's future look like. I mean, what are some things that you might want to see in downtown?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, obviously if we want to take Danbury so you look at Stamford, South Norwalk, it's growing like crazy. There's a lot of development, a lot of malls, buildings being built because everyone in New York is moving out and trying to live a little farther out, whether that's because they want to live in the suburbs or it's just cheaper to live there, especially my generation. And so Danbury is going to begin to get that effect from the train and just
without even really incenting people to come and live here.
And it's not because Danbury is great or anything, which it is, but they're beginning to move here. So the focus for Danbury should be what is this new generation that's coming up that's beginning to get money, beginning to get expendable income to be attracted to Danbury and then to stay in Danbury. And I think the problem that we're seeing with our current city council and just kind of the whole political milieu is that they're very still stuck in what has been working with them, and they're not really reaching down to the future and saying, okay, how do we set up Danbury for you guys? And also, what are the trends that are happening? So a lot of the younger generation, specifically like even younger ones, I mean, people that are 17, 16, 15, they're not getting interested in getting a license or driving a car.
It's really rather remarkable.
It's very strange. They want to be driven around.
Yeah.
And why? Well, because you have Uber, where you could literally, you get a car to show up and then you get driven somewhere. You don't want to deal with insurance. You don't want to deal with owning a car.
Car payments, right?
Car
Monthly
payments.
car payments
Right.
if you're leasing.
So everyone is going to want to live closer. So if you're working in Norwalk and it's too expensive there, well then you'll live in Danbury. You take a 30, 20-minute train ride commute, and then you walk to your
right,
company.
so downtown speaks to that, right? And as a place to live, if you're going to be accessing transportation.
And walking, restaurants, and so I think the future. I mean, and that's why I think us younger generation needs to start getting more involved politically, whether it's running for government or just organizing. so we can really begin to kind of share
Well, have
our
a
ideas,
voice,
our
right?
views.
And have a voice.
Right.
Angie, what do you think about what might be nice for downtown? Again, as a mom with young kids, and
Right.
And what's ahead for that?
Yeah, I agree with what Nelson is saying, and I think that definitely it should be more family oriented. I think there should be like bike routes, or make it more kid friendly. Have more things to look at.
so kids get engaged in the downtown.
So that families will want to go downtown and take a walk, or like sit in a nice restaurant that is
That's
also
kid-friendly.
Kid-friendly. I think it has a lot of potential, and like Nelson said, like the Danbury is growing with a newer generation, and I think it should be geared towards the
And
newer
demographically, just that age group is part of the largest demographics, next to sort of mine and above, and well, we'll shrink by attrition to be, not so moribund about it. I remember growing up because my parents were from another country. They were both from Germany. My mother's side of the family just didn't have access to them. They were in behind the Iron Curtain in East Germany. And I remember I have great memories of coming downtown. And as I mentioned, you have roots in the Ecuadorian community, and with the Civic Center on Main Street, there must have also been, for you, memories of being downtown while you were growing up. I know my mother had her favorite deli that she considered her butcher because there were specialty cold cuts there. There used to be a music school downtown where I took accordion lessons. So very fond memories of downtown growing up.
Yes. I remember driving my bike with my cousin when we were younger, going to the YMCA, which is no longer there.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Enjoying the park, Rogers Park.
And because downtown is a safe city, right? You could sort of do that without your parents having to worry too
Right,
much.
my parents weren't. They weren't afraid. There was that. They had that security. I guess they were secure that nothing would happen to us. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, I'm glad to hear that you both have an interest in seeing that, and in serving in public government too. There's decisions that are made at those levels, especially on zoning and certainly on city council. So it's very reassuring to know that you have that in mind. And it's one of the issues that have been brought up in the mayoral campaign, that there's been a plan for downtown for 15 years, and yet downtown still looks very much as it did 15, 20 years ago. Another thing you both mentioned too is about getting involved and looking to have a say in what our city look like. I very much believe that you really are the inheritors of our city, and we really should be considering what the city looks like 10, 15, 20 years from now. And one of the characteristics of a healthy city is being able to have, communities come together, shared experiences, and I always feel very strongly that happens downtown. But to get to that point, there's some, I guess, in a sense, political realities. I'm very interested to learn from you, Anjali, that you are a graduate this year of the 2019 Emerge program.
Yes.
Can you just go into and explain a bit what Emerge was about? One of our previous guests was Candace Fay, who you and she both participated as representatives from Danbury in this program.
Yes. So yes, I was fortunate enough to be able to participate in the Emerge Connecticut program. And what it is basically is a organization that recruits and trains Democratic women and provides them with the tools that they need in order to run for a public office. And the best part of it is just gaining that powerful network and meeting so many people and hearing their stories and just feeling the support and having someone there for you if you ever need advice or what to do.
And how many were in the class?
There was a total of 18. 18
and
of
then you
us.
would have, every week would be a certain topic, and you'd have guest speakers, I think, right?
Yes, so the
Yeah.
program ran for 6 months, and we would meet on Saturdays, I think like about
Yeah, that's a
two
big commitment,
Saturdays.
6 months.
2 Saturdays in a month, and what was really cool is that it was from different parts of Connecticut. So we would go all over Connecticut for these trainings, and they were 8 hours long on a Saturday. But it was a very diverse group of women from different parts of Connecticut as well, with different experiences. So it was all learning opportunities.
So when we reached out and asked for you to run, you're basically putting your, walking the walk and not just talking the talk. And now you have all this wonderful new knowledge and what you can do about it.
Yes, I do, yes. I mean, I obviously was sitting through this training, but I haven't actually gone out and practiced it. So I'm excited to put to practice what I've learned.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people in our Democratic Party are also excited that you've come on board. And Nelson, you've been involved in conversations of from the party's perspective of how the Democratic Party in Danbury can reach out to the immigrant community. I don't know if you could just give your perspective on that, because we've been in the same room, around the same table, kind of discussing how to bring in the Latino populations, which I always feel it's unfair to sort of take that big umbrella and say Latino, because certainly your family from Colombia has a different experience from a family from Ecuador that's different than a family's experience from Dominican. These are distinctive cultures, maybe unified in language, but everyone speaks their own type of Spanish.
Yeah. I think the main problem is that people locally just don't feel like they're part of the government. One is, I think it's mostly just indifference; they don't care. And then another one is just that they haven't been properly able to be lured into becoming interested in local politics. And so
is it a chicken and egg? Is it generally maybe younger people are indifferent, so they're not involved, or because they can't see themselves reflected in local government, they're indifferent to getting involved?
I think the problem is just the political parties, which are the ones that are in power, get very comfortable with their whole position, so they don't. So right now the problem is on the Democrats, because the Republicans have had control for all these years, and so the Republicans are fine with everything staying the same because they can get elected and continue to get elected. So it's up to the Democrats to have to try something new to kind of attack that base that has been created. And so it's kind of like, so the reason that I'm interested in getting very involved with the Democrat Party is because there's a huge chance to get people that have either not voted before or are Democrats and just haven't been interested in getting involved and voting to get involved, and then really come in with new ideas, with the new ways of doing things. But I think it's more just properly being able to communicate to communities that haven't been reached out before, and letting them know that we are interested in their needs and their interests, and communicating that properly with them, so that then during election season they're getting involved and they're also run or be a part of it in some capacity. And so that's what I'm trying to do with the Latino communities, getting them interested in the political process locally, and then organizing them. I think that's the key, is how do you organize them?
Right, as
so
through
that
Emerge, right? That's the organization really is a big key.
So people go out door
puzzle.
knocking, people go out and tell their family, their friends, but then also we get more power in the sense of being able to influence the community for a more positive cause. And again, this goes back to the majority are not going to be interested in doing the day-to-day things. So how do you create an organization that is focused on benefiting Danbury that also represents a larger community?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times that does focus on really what's beneficial for families. I mean, I find in my experience in reading that I've done, you look at other communities, that are functioning well, that it really centers around families and opportunities for families. Because in the end, when you're part of a family, as our parents came to this country for a better life, not just for themselves, but for their families, decisions you make are based around that idea. So I think it's a great motivator, but there also needs to be a mechanism for making sure that families can participate or are being looked after. I know that a lot of the Latino communities, whether Dominican or Ecuadorian, are very involved in sports. The Ecuadorian Soccer League, I understand, is just epic. I mean, as well as the Dominican Baseball League is just epic. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts to share with that about how to integrate, right, the old with the new, and it's just not new Americans with old Americans, but it's also, you know, the Latino and immigrant communities with the communities that are here.
Yeah, I think it's focused. Yeah, it's focusing on the key things that connect everyone. So what do we want? We want a better Danbury. We want a Danbury that grows, that is for families.
A vibrant downtown, right? We want that.
Yes, and so instead of selling the specifics of what each different community is going to receive, it's more of like, let's all work together for this larger goal. And then I think the strategy becomes, how do you specifically reach out to all the different groups? Because all the different groups are going to have their own needs and their own differences and beliefs, and so the whole focus needs to be, Danbury is in a position to grow significantly. Now, how do you manage that kind of growth, and then how do you get all the communities involved that feel like they have a say in the community, so they go out and vote, but that also, you know, kind of deals with the diversity that is Danbury.
Yeah, and that's definitely a platform issue for a mayoral candidate, that the planned growth, that there really hasn't been a strategy for planned growth in Danbury. So we have this overdevelopment on the west side that's pressuring the schools, and not really taking into concern, really, I mean, the focus on downtown potentially should have been 10 years ago, when it was really trending and demonstrating that that's where people wanted to live, where younger people wanted to live, where young professionals want to live, where there's innovation and entrepreneurship. So we might be a little bit behind as a result of what our present leadership, but moving forward, I'm really hoping that the Democrats can take back City Hall and put some of those principles into action. Yeah. And I think, we, in the 5 minutes that we have left, your perspective, I feel like a lot of the involvement that's happened is a result of our national politics, and without getting too much into national politics, but do you feel that's sort of activating people locally? Is that what brought you into Emerge? Is that what's, you know, the future of your children, the opportunity that they might have in this country?
Definitely. I mean, now that I'm a mother, everything I do is I think about them and the benefit that it will bring them, and just I think, you know, the power that our voice has is very important, and it's the reason why I'm getting involved, and just looking to also just be maybe an inspiration for others, to go out there and also get involved and
lead by example.
Right.
Are you getting support, or do people think you're being realistic in your pursuits, and they're excited for you, and they're excited about the Danbury Democratic Party?
I think so. A lot of people are surprised, and the energy has been positive. So I'm...
Now, is that surprise based that you're been asked to participate, or that it's you participating?
That I'm participating.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm glad we convinced you to join our team.
Right. So yeah. So we'll see. I'm hoping to just bring more people to get involved, more Latinos, and for them to be able to maybe feel welcome to get more involved.
Yeah, and civic engagement. I mean, I always like to put forth that anyone in Danbury, your civic engagement should start with us at the Danbury Democratic Party, and it really is important to be civically engaged. I think now more than ever. Also to point out that our state elections in November and our congressional elections, that really activated and motivated a lot of people, and we had great wins in the State House with everyone who ran. We have a full delegation of Democrats representing us in the State House, and that particularly was younger people and the Latino community that were out there helping door knock, which is really the essence of getting people to the polls. So we have about a couple of minutes left here. I don't know if there's any other items that you might want to mention. Anything you want to say?
Well, I was going to add on to your question. I think the state of the national politics has really made people very emotional about everything that's happening, both on either side, the conservative and the liberal side. And so it's and so you saw the election with Julie, where she was able to properly channel that emotion into what's going to help the local community. And so I think that's going to be the key for Democrats in that, taking those emotions that have been created by the media that has just been,
That's polarizing,
Yes,
actually.
yeah.
And to your point, it's a very well taken on both sides. But I'm always telling people that we have more in common as community, living in the same community, than we don't.
Right.
And we still live in a country where, you can elect, you have a choice of what party you want to belong to and who you vote for.
Yeah, and taking those emotions and building out a plan for this is how we're going to help Danbury. And that is both, it doesn't need to be conservative or liberal, but
Right.
it's focused
It needs to
on
be-
Danbury.
Yeah, and having a representative voice.
Right.
So I do want to thank you both. Like I said at the top of the program, I'm just so encouraged that we have younger representation in Danbury. I don't mean to sound ageist, but I'm really excited that you were both willing to participate. And then also that the Latino community is becoming involved in our local politics, because it does matter to Danbury. So thanks again for tuning in. This is Danbury Dems, a show hosted every week by me, Andrea Gartner, the Danbury Democratic Chair. And I thank you very much for tuning in again.